Why, it's Becky.
Hello, hello.
Hello. You know we're coming to see you in March, right?
I never got the word for sure. Awesome.
Yep. We got to get those arrangements made, but yes, we're going to be in Tucson.
Super. Well, let me know if I can do anything to help. Not that I'm an expert around here yet, but
you can come meet us for dinner.
That would be awesome. Yeah, let me know the dates.
I can tell you where it's the week of, I believe, March 14th.
Okay.
Abby. Yes.
I was answering while on mute. Sorry. I've been having a great conversation with everyone where no one answers. So.
Hey, Becky.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
Good, good. Like I said, you guys just can't get rid of me, but I'm still interested in things like this, and I need to call Arizona 4-H and volunteer. I did once and they were out, and I need to get that done.
That's awesome. They would love to have you, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I was actually in Neld with Jeremy Engel, who's the 4-H program leader in Arizona.
Oh, I just called the county office. Which we'll be driving by again today.
Kim, did y'all get new backgrounds? I like that.
Yeah, we had I forgot.
I like that.
Thank you. I like yours too. Getting ready for Turkey Day.
I'm trying to. Your name actually came up in a meeting I just got done with. I'll email you about it later.
Okay, cool.
I think I'd be scared if I were you, Kimberly.
Nah, she knows.
I should be.
I email her all the time. I was like, what do you think of this?
I'm going to go on mute.
Kimberly, you could probably go ahead with kicking things off whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Kimberly Davis, and I'm Extension Agent and Emergency Management Specialist at Florida A&M University Corporative Extension. I am a part of the Extension Disaster Education Network's Professional Development Committee, where I serve as chair. And I'd like to welcome you to today's evening workshop. So at this time, please take a moment to drop your name and institution in the chat box so we'll know who's here with us today. Okay, so today our presentation will be Step Up with 4-H, a 4-H guide to implementing FEMA STEP program. Our speaker today will be Shelby Carlson. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box in your Zoom control panel. I'll bring them up in the end of the presentation. And I would also like to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. At this time, I'm going to drop the evaluation link in the chat box. So please take a moment when you get a chance to complete the evaluation. Now, without further ado, we'll turn it over to our presenter. Our presenter today is Shelby Carlson. Shelby serves as a 4-H Youth Development Educator at University of Illinois Extension. Shelby joined the University of Illinois Extension in 2018. Teaming with local 4-H program coordinators and volunteers, she plans, conducts, and evaluates programs that are consistent with the needs of local youth. So at this time, we're going to turn it over to Shelby.
Thank you, Kim, and good afternoon to everyone. Unless you were joining us from another coast, then perhaps good morning. I am so excited to be here and talk about our new Step Up with 4-H program, kind of a guide to help us implement FEMA's program. I will go ahead and get started by sharing my slides, and we will start reviewing that overview. Okay. Are you seeing the correct view?
Yes.
Wonderful. Always great when you can get that on the first chance. Okay. So our Step Up with 4-H is the title of our 4-H guide that we have developed here in Illinois to implement the STEP program that is created by FEMA. So once again, thank you for the great introduction. My name is Shelby Carlson, and I'm a 4-H Youth Development Educator with University of Illinois Extension. So I do work in West Central Illinois, kind of over on the kind of bordering Iowa a little bit in a 4-county region. I will say that while my co-authors were unable to join us today because they were pulled in 1,000 different directions, as is typically the way in extension, this was not a solo project. And we will talk about how little of a solo project it was. But it is important that I note that while I was an author on this, I also had help. Kurt Sinclair is a state 4-H specialist who was also key in developing this guide, as well as Dwayne Friend, an energy and environmental stewardship educator with University of Illinois Extension. So before we get talking about utilizing the guide to access STEP, I want to make sure that we take a pause and talk about what STEP is. Now, for those of us who are regularly involved in disasters, some of these terms might be a little bit more familiar to you, but always great to do a reminder of what the acronyms stand for, especially when we get inundated with them all day, every day. So FEMA, a term that we have already used several times, is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And the STEP program that they've developed is the Student Tools for Emergency Planning. FEMA has recently redone this curriculum to make it more modern, up to date, and it is geared largely towards students who are in 4th and 5th grade. It is my observation and opinion that some of the activities can be a little bit higher level than maybe some 4th graders are ready for, especially as we come off of the pandemic and some of the interruptions we had in our education. But the great news about this is that this curriculum is still super high quality and it's very flexible. So us as extension professionals can absolutely take that and make the adaptations that we need to make sure that the students that we're teaching are still getting a great experience. The STEP curriculum is also free, something that you can access by requesting a hard copy or always download a free copy from FEMA. And that is always an important thing that we get excited for when we're looking for high quality programs, which this certainly is. So our Step Up guide, this is going to be a lot of using the word step and step up, but Step Up is that guide that we at Illinois Extension have developed to using STEP, the program that is developed by FEMA. And we did this because in some conversations with representatives from Eden, with Illinois Extension, and with representatives from FEMA, we talked about how great this program would be to be utilized for the youth that we serve in Extension. But what we did talk about was that sometimes it can be intimidating to take a program that wasn't written for us in mind, and how to implement that, how to do that in a nice, easy way. So through that meeting, we kind of formed a cohort of people who said, well, let's tackle this project. Let's take that awesome, great, high quality resource that was developed by experts in the field, and let's see how we can implement that to meet the 4-H and Extension model. And that's what Step Up is. It is just a guide. It is not me rewriting programs. It is a small 14-page document that gives you some tips and tricks to implement that in a way that would meet and match 4-H. So I do use that emphasis on Big M and positive youth development. For those of you who maybe aren't with 4-H, Big M is that model that encompasses the essential elements, talking about belonging, independence, generosity, and mastery. So we do take those things into consideration, and we also take into consideration how we can form that positive youth development, how we can make sure that those relationships with a positive, caring adult are taking place. And a lot of that is by developing this program in a way that meets the tried and true 4-H model of being able to go into schools or in a club setting. So that is why this guide came to be. Okay, so other reasons we thought that this was important to use this guide and why you should consider taking advantage of this guide, which is very much still in a pilot phase. I will say that. We are looking to pilot this to consistently improve and do what we can to make the best better in a true 4-H model. So reasons it's valuable. We always need to increase our disaster preparedness programming. Natural disasters are only on the rise, and we need to do what we can to get those youth prepared. They really are kind of that next generation, the decision makers. And we know that typically if you want to see change in the house, the kids are where you start, because the kids are the active listeners that you can have. And this is a great high quality disaster preparedness program that already exists. The guide to using it is also free. So you can access the curriculum for free, and you can take part in the pilot with our small guide also for free. It was designed by extension professionals for the use of extension professionals. So while that STEP program that FEMA designed is amazing, we are so happy to have it as a resource. It wasn't designed for use in extension. And this guide kind of explains how we can break it down and how we can do that. Another great, wonderful tool that I love about not only our guide, but the STEP program is that it's very much designed with the knowledge that it would be great if you can get 7 hours with the same audience, but sometimes we're lucky to have a half an hour. So it is a very plug and go model, something that you can take, do for a short half-hour lesson at an outdoor day, like I had the opportunity to do earlier this year, or something that maybe you could develop a club around. Also, while some of the activities might need some modification, you could do this virtually if you were still in a situation where concerns about the pandemic were still an issue, or as we saw, we were able to extend our geographic reach a little bit when we modified some things to virtually and make sure that we could reach all people in our community. So what does this the STEP program look like? If you have not had a chance to look at it, it is 3 core lessons that we consider highly encouraged, if not required. Those core lessons can range anywhere because, like I said, it is a plug and go sort of model, anywhere from 30 minutes to 60 minutes apiece. That is without accessing that additional 4-H activity that comes in the guide. We did develop a guide, and we did include an additional 4-H activity that's designed with that hands-on learning that meets the 4-H model. So those 3 core lessons from 30 to 60 minutes, as well as additional hazard units that are considered optional. These might be, a specific situation that is relevant to your area. Not all of us are maybe living with the reality of having to prepare for wildfires or earthquakes. So maybe that's not the part of the lesson that we need to most focus on, but maybe it is something that you want to. So you are allowed to pick those hazard units. And the great thing is that the young people get to earn badges declaring them emergency prepared. So those can either be virtual badges, or when you request a copy of the curriculum, if you request a hard copy, you can also get those physical badges from FEMA. That can be done. They can be declared emergency certified after completing just those 3 core lessons, or you can choose to do it the core lessons and the hazard units. And always working towards badges is still that fun. It makes it a game. It gives those youth something to strive for and get excited about. The core lessons, what these look like, are intro to emergency preparedness, creating an emergency kit, and designing a family communication plan. So again, these are these core lessons that can range anywhere from 30 minutes to about a half an hour, without using the 4-H activity. But again, it has activities. You can kind of pick and choose what you would like to do. And these core lessons are things that would definitely be relevant in any emergency situation, not specific to a specific type of emergency. So the intro to emergency preparedness, the sort of things that you can expect youth to be able to do as they go through it, is identify those examples of when preparedness was helpful. They're going to be able to kind of differentiate between hazards, emergencies, disasters, and how to use those terms. They will be able to describe the possible disasters that they might encounter as a resident of wherever it is that they are living. And then the fun 4-H activity that goes with that is our watch, warning, all clear activity. That is the extreme weather version of red light, green light. I had an opportunity to take this activity out to an outdoor education day where we talked about staying safe when we were outdoors and maybe on a hike or something. And this was a great way to cement those terms and the meanings when they get maybe a watch or a warning alert on their phone or weather radio, and the pace at which they need to go towards safety. Of course, the guide also tries to, as we encompass being that inclusive environment, encompass opportunities for adaptations in our activities to make sure that we are being respectful of students who may be living with a mobility issue or some other things. So it also has a kind of a component of how you can lift your hand different ways. If you were in a classroom model, or while I was outside, I invited some students to serve as a judge with me, to stand up and help pick their classmates who maybe fumbled a little bit and needed to go back to the beginning. But again, always things that you can adapt. When we create an emergency kit, this lesson, we are going to expect that our children are going to be able to describe the needs and things that they should have in an emergency kit, as well as the components of it. And they would be ready to go home and build their own emergency kit. The kind of additional 4-H activity that we developed into this to really demonstrate why it is so important is a relay almost of sorts. We would verbally give kids a list of things that they needed to make sure they gathered in the emergency as they were trying to leave, and they would be, spread around the room. We might then time them to say, how fast can you grab all these things? And then the alternate, we would time them as they grabbed their emergency kit and made their way out the door, and see how we can easily become forgetful when we are in a state of working very quickly, a little bit of panic, a lot of adrenaline going, which would be mimicked in the idea of this race, and then see how quickly it was to grab that emergency bag where they already had all their supplies. So again, another 4-H way to do, add some hands-on learning. We would design a family communication plan where kids would learn the opportunity to understand the importance and identify the different parts of the plan, as well as practice that. Our hands-on activity that we incorporated with that is a bit of a turn on the game of telephone, where we typically would repeat something in someone's ear and see how muddled that message comes by the time it finally gets through, by relaying a story to someone who is in the room and asking that another person who's left the room to come in and listen to that story. They would then retell someone else who'd been outside. And over the course of 4 or 5 people, we will understand just how muddy messages can be and the importance of making sure that a communication plan is articulated and coming directly from the source. Like I said, we also have these hazard lessons. I will note that when we developed this slide, when we developed this guide, the pandemic lesson, hazard lesson, was still currently in the works. So this iteration of the guide does not encompass that, but certainly something that as we review the pilot activities, we would want to take advantage of. So there is hazard lessons on fire, severe weather, earthquakes, and floods, as well as some suggested resources on first aid lessons and how you might want to encompass basic first aid if you were doing something with this guide. In that fire lesson, so again, these are ones that you can pick and choose based kind of solely on what is the need of your community. Here where we live in Western Illinois, wildfires are not a significant risk that we might encounter. However, we do want to make sure that we're prepared for severe weather. We live in a place where we do get a lot of that. So it's utilizing and accessing those things that meet the needs of the youth you are delivering to. In the fire one, youth would identify ways to prevent fires in their homes. So they are going to do a little bit of that. They are going to try to understand what a fire, what to do if a fire occurs and how they would escape that. And they're going to practice those drills and preparation. Kind of that hands-on learning 4-H activity that we developed with that is a fire safety hunt where you will guide kids through the room, pointing out and counting the different exits, hazards, signs, things that you want them to become familiar with recognizing, as well as getting a chance to practice those skills, reminding them about, stop, drop, and roll. And then utilizing some bubbles to help youth understand how to stay low under that smoke layer when they're escaping. So by blowing bubbles and encouraging them to kind of crawl on the ground through without those bubbles landing on their back. So again, lots of great ways. Again, these activities, these hands-on learnings, all have modifications written in if that was something that you would need so that we can be in an inclusive environment. And again, always things we are looking to work out some of those modifications for in the pilot. Our severe weather. This gets to be a bit wordy for us, but we're doing things like identifying the different kinds of weather that they may experience in their community, and understanding the dangers that is posed by those things. We would also talk about what severe weather are they most likely to encounter, and the steps to take to stay safe no matter those conditions. These learning objectives are directly out of the STEP curriculum developed by FEMA. So these are the things that you can expect them to learn that I pulled directly from there. And with this, we have a bit of a trivia game. So something that you could sit down with these youth and kind of test their knowledge on severe weather. That was put together by Dwayne Friend, our extension expert on weather. The earthquake activity, we are going to learn and understand how we can protect ourselves if an earthquake occurs, where earthquakes are likeliest to occur, and kind of how we can prepare for those. And we demonstrate kind of the impact and how earthquakes work by a small activity with a cup of sand, a small stone, some water, and kind of flicking the edge of that cup, mimicking that shaking, and see how easily that can displace things. Again, we are always trying to make things experiential learning when we talk the extension and 4-H model. We talk about flooding and learning what causes these floodings and why floods can be so dangerous. We also, again, kind of revisit watches and warnings and what those terms mean, and what kind of damage the flooding can do. And this is an activity that can take a little bit more resources, but I think is really impactful. And we've got a video recommendation that kind of encompasses some of this. But this is we encourage the activity, our additional one, where we kind of take some clay and mold rivers and the different shapes that they can do. And then we build little paper houses that go next to that, and we decorate those and pour water down to mimic that river flow. And we can see how the different shapes of rivers and those barriers impact. And with those paper houses, we can directly see where the water level was on those. So it does give us a chance to kind of really see the impact of flooding and how some of the interventions that we can take can prevent that. We also have that additional kind of recommendation on some great first aid resources that we think are valuable, or this is a great time to bring in someone, a local partner who specializes in first aid to develop that. So we want to talk about how can we use this program? How can we use the guide and Step Up and STEP in general in our programs? In Illinois, and I think in several other states, I'm not sure exactly how spread out they are, we have what we call spin clubs or special interest clubs. These are clubs that meet over a single topic area and focus on that specifically versus our community clubs that kind of meet more generally and do business, and the learning is a little bit in their projects a little bit more self-driven. So in these spin clubs, our requirements are that they meet 6 times and kind of a minimum of 6 hours over those 6 times, so that positive relationship starts to take place. So a recommended model for this might be those 3 core lessons the first times, a couple hazard units, and then we always try to have that culminating event where we can celebrate and demonstrate that the students have mastered those skills. And our guide has suggestions for the culminating events, and we will get to those. You could also take it into a classroom and take lessons, a single lesson. If they say, I can give you 45 minutes with my class, that's great. We never want to pass up those 45 minutes. And absolutely, that would be a case where maybe we pull one of these hazard or one of these core units to take. But if you were able to get more time, you know, maybe even in an hour and a half, you could cover the basics of those 3 core lessons. Of course, adding hazard units as your time and the needs that your community is facing allow. One thing that I would like to note with this that we have not built into the this version of the guide that we hope to add when we have collected a little bit more data with the pilot is how we can cope with maybe youth who have experienced a rather traumatic disaster. And as you talk about this, how that may, how you should be prepared to recognize that some youth may be coming with some baggage when they come into your session, into your class, and that some of the things that you talk about might be a little bit challenging for them. So being respectful of that. Those of us, we work in extension, we've all received to a level, some point of training or been encouraged on how to do that, but definitely something we want to be explicit about in the next version of our guide. We talked about the culminating event. That is such an important part of our spin club experience, a chance for students to demonstrate that mastery. And one of their favorite ways to do this is by talking to others or giving back. So something that might look like is that tabletop event where we kind of mimic some of these things. Maybe it is holding a drive of collecting things that would go into emergency kits for families who are maybe living a little bit more on a budget. Developing that emergency kit right at first can be quite pricey and costly. So it might be, collecting those items that families in need would need to go into their emergency kit. Or having just a fair about what items would go in an emergency kit and really allowing those students to share with others some new knowledge that they've gained. So I will open it up to questions shortly, but the things that I did want to make sure that we were able to articulate with you is that the Step Up with 4-H, this guide, Carrie has posted a link to it in the chat, but you can also access it if you shoot me an email. I do ask that if you're using it and you have thoughts on how we could improve this. Like I said, this is a first draft of this, and it was a first draft developed during COVID. So that did mean that we didn't get a chance to practice and try out some of these activities with the youth audience prior to getting some of them in place. And kids have changed a little bit since that too. This is definitely, our kids have not escaped without some impact to this. So feel free to email me. You can always gather that. It is several times in the step guide. It is also going to be in the things that we send out, or the easy way that I tell people is Google Shelby Carlson, Illinois 4-H, and I promise my email pops up. And let me know that that you're delivering this program and that you want to be part of the pilot, so we can kind of keep an eye on that. Access the STEP program itself, FEMA's version, either via a free download or you can request a hard copy. We will get those links posted in the chat in just a moment. But they are also in that step guide on page 5. You can access those links. And that is a great kind of hard bound resource. I know I have my thing on, but an easy copy. It's relatively small, so it doesn't take up too much room on your bookcase, and has some great activities that really allow for kind of a plug and go model. Those same links are where you can access the badges and additional resources that STEP has and that FEMA have. So they have that, card game, which name is escaping me right now. They have a youth card game. They've got activities that are geared towards youth. Definitely feel free to take a look at those and access those when needed. So again, here's my contact information.